In my freshman year at college, I didn't have a single humor bone in my body. Students would ask how I was doing, and I would respond, uh, Are your parents still alive? I had all these philosophical, fascinating thoughts that I wanted to share, but because I could only deliver them like a lobotomized ChatGPT, they came across as boring. Why? Because I grew up in the small rural town of Hamilton, New York, where there was more cows than women. And that meant I couldn't build the humor, charisma skills that most people had coming to college. So, like all good students, I turned my trauma into fuel for growing myself and becoming funnier. And I did dozens of stand up open mic experiences. I wrote tens of articles analyzing humor, and I watched hundreds of comedy specials. So that leads us to now, where I'm going to teach you the meta principles of being more funny. Everything I wish I knew coming into college. And this will help you. I'm really proud of this first one actually. It'll help you become funnier, a little more humorous, able to tickle people's noggins. It'll make you more likable, which is nice. Grow your relationships. That's an added bonus. And it'll make your fascinating thoughts, which I know you have, more interesting because you can give them in a funny way. But the most cool thing of all that it will allow you to do is help you love life and pursue what this channel is really about: spirituality. Becoming more humorous isn't just about ingraining humor techniques, that's part of it, but it's really about realizing that existence is already ridiculous and relaxing your seriousness enough to notice. So, with that being said, let's start with the mindsets to becoming funnier. Then we'll move on to the first principles of what makes something funny. And then finally, what are the types of humor that you can do, and how can we start building your humor persona? So, three mindsets that I want to share with you for becoming funnier. The first is surprisingly obvious and yet probably the most powerful, which is start seeing the world like a funny place. There is an opportunity for humor in every situation, and especially males are often too logical and too serious to see that in college. We think, oh, we have to get that good grade. We need to be serious in this interaction so they don't think we're weird. And sometimes that's good, stops us from saying something stupid. But if we want to make a joke, we need to see the joke in the first place. So a lot of humor is less about doing new things and more about recognizing the funny in the things you're already doing. The other mindset is learn the skill of humor, not one off jokes. There's a lot of humor advice on YouTube, which is all about ingraining these habits, these punchlines, these techniques for being funnier, like the rule of three. And they're kind of trash. An hot take. They can help sometimes. The problem is that what makes someone really funny is when they can come up with the joke in the moment. They don't need that line, they just spot it. These are the jokes that feel the most natural, the most authentic, the most alive. And the last mindset is I want you to get rid of your filter, depending upon the context. The filter is what stops you from saying that joke that pops in your head when you're with that person that you like or your friend. And to some degree, it's there to protect us because we don't want to be shamed or not laughed at. It's embarrassing. I totally get that. That was also what scared me before I started doing open mic comedy. But it is this filter that also stops us from not only seeing the funny, but doing the funny in the moment. And so, depending upon the context, we want to lessen that filter a little. So, with those three mindsets for become funnier out of the way, let's move on to some humor first principles. We're going to understand why is something actually funny. Seriously, why? Why do our bellies tingle when we hear something funny from someone else? It's really quite the question, because it's very hard to answer once you get down and gritty to it. And yet there are some answers that I can give you. So I'm going to give you a practical answer first. The fundamental humor theory is that things are funny when they are benignly violating. Let me give you an example and then I'll explain. Let's say you're hungry and you're with a friend. Normally, you would say, hey, you want to go to the dining hall? But instead, you find the funny and you say, would you like to extend our bellies horizontally together? It's a very stupid joke, but the reason it might be funny is it's benignly violating. It's benign in that it's not so outside of the scope of what it is that you're talking about that they're offended or they don't get it or it's ridiculous. And it also violates something, which is it violates what you expect would be said about finding food. It violates a social norm because you're playing into the idea of extending your bellies horizontally. And there's a whole culture around not talking about weight issues. So it violates that. It violates your what you would normally say to this, not just what everyone else would say, but how you would normally say you want to get some food. So it's benignly violating. And laughing's purpose is to relieve the tension of a benign violation. How is that tension built? The tension is built through cognitive, social, identity, physical, and more means, which we'll all get into later. You don't have to take notes. There will be a test though. And I'm a hard grader. So you'll relieve the tension by laughing. All humor is based off of this. Pretty much everything has a benign violation to it. It's also why you don't laugh sometimes. Maybe it's not enough of a violation. Or maybe it's not benign. Maybe it's too dark for the context. And people are like, yo, chill out. That was crazy. There's a more spiritual answer, though, which is, in my opinion, more interesting for why things are funny. Here it is. And honestly, this might be the most powerful insight of the whole video. Humor collapses the self's serious grip on reality. Humor collapses the self's serious grip on reality. Now, you might be asking, what the does that mean? Well, I'm about to explain it, which is, what is the self in the first place? The self is simply the parts of reality that you attach to. Your body, your mind, your beliefs, your grades, whatever you define yourself as. Once you define this, yourself, in order to continue living that way, needs to survive psychologically, not just physically. You survive your physical body by, extending your belly horizontally, for example. But psychologically, you survive it through continuing your routines, your habits, hanging out with the people that you know, embodying your values. And so humor collapses the attachment that you have to these things, that serious grip, and actually opens you up to spiritual growth. Have you ever noticed, hopefully you've met someone like this, you'd be blessed if you did. Have you noticed how the most spiritually lovable people are always quite playful? They just don't have that serious a grip on reality. And part of it is because they have such a humorous attitude towards life. That is what we're really trying to build with humor. So, with that being said, what are some other first principles of humor? Well, some of the most common is one, subversion, which is simply sometimes the breaking of an expectation is what creates the funny. So for example, a really shitty knock knock joke. Like, let's say someone's like, knock knock, who's there? Me, because I'm the one knocking. Now, that's a really dumb knock knock joke, but the whole point is that you thought it would actually be good. And the surprise at how it's not even a knock knock joke is what creates the funny. Or sometimes it's just the satisfaction of something working out how you thought. It's the opposite of subversion. It works out exactly what you expected. There's this one really funny Dave Chappelle bit where he says to the audience, "I am so funny. I'm going to tell you the punchline of my joke before I give the joke, and you're still going to laugh." We knew what the punchline was the whole story, but he's so funny, and part of the funny came from knowing the punchline. We still totally laughed when he did it. So that's one other principle. Incongruence is another big one. This is just things together that don't seem like they should. It could be incongruence in words, in truth, in identity, in context. Like an example is breaking news: the pool closed because of torrential downpour. We don't expect the pool to, it's just strange. Or like a fire station that's on fire is also incongruence. And what do all these examples have in common? Well, they have a setup and they have a punchline. So for example, in one of my comedy bits that I gave, the first sentence that I say in my entire bit is, "After my third breakup in 2 years, I decided that the best way to heal wasn't therapy, wasn't journaling. It was sleeping on a dirt floor with a Swiss man named Theo." What is the setup there? The setup is what I just said. And then the punchline is simply, it was sleeping on a dirt floor with a Swiss man named Theo, right? You expect that healing would involve journaling or therapy or whatnot. But the punchline is no, it involved sleeping on the floor with a Swiss man. And especially for someone as gay coded as me, the invisible punchline is they think I'm gay, but I haven't said it. Spoiler alert, I'm not, but I would not blame you if half the people on this channel think I am, because, you know, the earrings definitely don't help. I won't lie. This shirt is not helping as well. Yeah. comment below if you thought that. That's kind of funny. So setup, punchline. There's also recontextualization is another big first principle. So this is just something's meaning gets entirely switched as you learn something new. So there's a really funny scene in one of my favorite video games, Dispatch, which is a superhero game. And one of the characters is just sitting, drinking some coffee, looking sad. Another character walks in. They see that character drinking the coffee and they're like, "Oh my God, I thought you were dead." And then the character drinking the coffee says, "Only inside." I love that joke. So this is funny because you get recontextualized as to what dead means in this context. You first thought it meant physical death, and then the character purposely misinterprets it as mental death. And to just say it out like that when you usually say that in a intimate setting is what makes for the funny. Now, you might have noticed at this point with all these first principles that humor is highly context dependent. It's relational. Some of these things are funny only because of the context that they're given in. And this is another core aspect of what makes things funny, the context you give. Humor can be given through a book, as a meme, through audio or visuals, through conversation, through stand-up comedy, through a YouTube video, flirting with someone you're interested in. So the insight here is the medium itself is the message. Depending upon the context, things are funny in different ways. So books tend to lend themselves to more subtle, more longer setting up, slow burning humor. Whereas audio and visuals tend to lend themselves towards faster, more explicit humor and multimodal humor. And it's because you can consume through audio visual in more information sources. And they go so fast nowadays, especially with shorts. Whereas with the books, you can take your time. People read at different speeds. So that is very important when thinking about humor. Another important first principle is you have to find the humor style that feels authentic to you. So when I say humor style, I mean, what type of humor do you like? What context of humor do you like using that type in? What vessel do you use to give humor? And finally, what's your humor persona? So I know that was a lot of things. Let me break down some of those again. So humor style in general is all of these things. Firstly, it's the type of humor you use. Is it cognitive? Is it social? Is it identity, dark, physical, and sensory, or meta humor? We're going to get into all of those really soon. but your specific preferences in each of those has a large role to play in the type of humor that you like. There's also the humor context, which we just discussed, the books, the audio-visual, stand-up comedy. Then the humor vessel, which is in that context, how do you give your humor? Is it through stories? Is it through imaginary worlds? Is it through one-liners? Now that I think about it, another one could be, is it through observational humor? And what themes is your humor on? Is it about racism, religion, politics, sex, humor itself? And the last part is your humor persona, which is how do you like giving this humor? Are you more dry? Are you more excited? Are you more angry? Punching up, punching down people? For me, you might see I'm more of a excited but also dry sometimes humor giver, and I like to punch people up instead of down. Feels bad to punch down. What's the experience you want to give your audience? Is it funny, sad, angry, jealous, embarrassed? All of these are part of your humor style. And a large part of becoming funnier is understanding what style resonates with you. We all have different styles. Potentially you're more into angry humor and you like punching down, whereas that would be the opposite of what I like doing. So now that we've gone through the first principles and the mindsets, let's talk about briefly the types of humor. So this will give you more of an idea of developing your humor style as you go on. As I talk about this, please think about what style might resonate with you. So firstly, there's cognitive humor. Cognitive humor is when the comedy lives in the reframe, right? Your brain expected one frame of meaning and you got handed another. So an example is the rule of three. One that I really like is we celebrated a very traditional Thanksgiving this year. We made pumpkin pie, cranberry sauce, and then we invited over our neighbors and murdered them. As you can see, the humor is primarily in the frame changing. So that's what makes it more cognitive. Another fun one is exaggeration. I did this one a bit ago at a stand-up comedy mic. So I was talking about American Sign Language because I was learning it recently. And I was telling people how funny I find it that the old signs for American Sign Language, they've changed a lot. So for example, the old sign for women in the North was just this. And that was very different from the one in the South, which was this. We've come a long way. Another humor style that I like is odd timing, which is when you just time something weird. So one line that shows it quite well is when life gets tough, sometimes it just takes the right path to turn you on, turn you back on track. Again, the humor comes in the weird timing of the sentence that makes you interpret it in a different frame than you might have expected. So that's cognitive humor. I like it a lot. It's definitely one of my styles. Then we have social humor, which is humor that relies on social norms or expectations. So an example is one person is in on something and the other two are not. In that same ASL bit that I was telling you earlier, I started by talking about a sign that I think is very fun for people to know, which is the sign for coffee. And the sign for coffee is this. And so I told people to look at their neighbor and do that sign. And it's specifically to say, you want coffee? So they did it. And it was only then, after they did it, that I conceded to them that this actually means make out. And so they were not asking what they thought. This violates the social norm, of course. Another example is two people in on something and one not. So in that case, I was in on something, nobody else was. And an example is voicing or doing something privately that you would normally do privately in public. So for example, there was one very funny thing I did with my ex where we were friends for a while before we got together, and so we decided it would be funny if with some of our other friends we revealed it in a funny way that we got together. And so there was one time where we were hanging out, and then we said goodbye to each other in front of our friend group because everyone else was leaving, and we just gave each other like a huge kiss. And oh my god, the laughter and like the what from everyone in the room was crazy, especially because the joke for so long was, how are you guys not together? Like, that's crazy for 3 years. So to have it cascade like that in one moment was great. And another example is being brutally honest or forward with someone that you should not be. That's another social norm violation. But let's move on from social norms. Identity humor is another funny one. So, identity humor is playing or assuming an identity not of your own. So, for example, pretending you're someone you're not. One of my favorite things to do through text is if I text something that the other person didn't like or that was a little forward as a joke, then I'll say one of two things, which is, yep, sorry, Aiden took the phone and typed that. I'm Aiden, so it doesn't really make any sense. And then another one is, sorry, my brother took the phone and typed that. And he did not take the phone. It was me. So they know that, and that's what makes it funny. Another one is doing a character bit is a good identity. So you assume someone that you're not in a story. So in one of my stand-up bits, I was talking about going backpacking with my friend in Glacier National Park. And he's really scared of bears. So before the trip, he ensures that I have my bear spray. And I told him multiple times, I was like, Theo, you know that the most dangerous part of a backpacking trip is the drive there, not the bears. And then he said in his accent, that's what they want you to think. Yeah, we funnily enough, later in that bit, we actually did see a bear, but we survived. So the whole funny part of that though is the identity, the identity of playing someone that I'm not. In this case, playing Theo. So that's identity humor. Also one that I love. Dark humor relies on tension in something emotional or dark. So for example, breaking integrity is a good one. There's a funny vegan bit that I had in my stand up one time where I was talking about being vegan. And the first thing I did to open the setup is I would take someone else's, usually my friend in the audience, like meat product, like a chicken sandwich, and then I would pretend that I was eating it as I went up. And as soon as I stopped chewing at the microphone, I would say, so I recently became a flexible vegan about 5 seconds ago, actually. That would always get some laughs. And I would thread that joke throughout the whole thing is like, having became vegan 2 minutes ago or 3 minutes ago, depending upon when I started. Another is a good joke that I made in another stand-up was about memory as a young adult. So I opened with saying that recently I realized that 60% of your best memories are made between the ages of 18 and 30. And I was trying to figure that out, and I realized it makes sense because it's the time of doing firsts, right? And it makes a lot of sense when I think about my own memories because there's the first time renting a car, first time running over someone with your rented car, first time burying the body of the person that you ran over with said rented car. Uh, anyways, and that's how I played that in the set. Is I just walked on after saying that, and people were just like, "What the like? Why is he saying this out of nowhere?" And yeah, I love dark humor as well. It's very fun. So two more types left. There's physical and sensory humor as another one. And these rely on physical gags, sexuality, or sensations. So, for example, there is a scene in Dispatch that I really liked where the whole team is getting some tacos at a Mexican restaurant, and one of the characters literally cuts her hand with her knife and just spreads blood all over her taco as sauce. It was disgusting. And you have no warning that it was coming in the scene. So I just started laughing hysterically when it happened. Another one is I was in my vegan bit also making a joke about how before becoming a flexible vegan, I had a lot of misconceptions about vegans. Like, for example, I thought being vegan was a euphemism for being a virgin, which means they don't get meat in two ways. Yeah, I like that one a lot. And the last type of humor, which is probably my favorite because it's the most cool, is meta humor. This is humor about humor, or humor that's aware of itself as humor. So, for example, playing against the humor expectation people have for you. Maybe they expect you to do social humor, and so you do dark. Breaking the fourth wall is a great one. Like, for example, in the vegan bit up above, I had another joke where I was like, another misconception that I had about vegans is that they were mostly self-righteous, privileged white people. Oh, shit. So, literally breaking the fourth wall with people inside of the humor, because, I'm talking about myself there. And another really funny meta humor is irony. Irony is much more complex than people realize. So there's different types of irony. The first type is sincerity, which is just you say what you mean. So for example, I'm homeless, and you actually are homeless. Then you have dramatic irony, which is when the person that the audience knows the person you're talking to. Actually, I'm getting that wrong. I'm mixing up the definitions there. So let me skip to situational irony because it'll make much more sense. Then situational irony is when the thing is funny because of the context you say it in. So for example, while you're doing a home tour, you tell the person, I'm homeless. And you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And verbal irony is another one. This is you saying something that this is you saying something that is not actually true. So for example, you say, I'm homeless in front of your friends while holding up a sign that says you're homeless, but they know you're not homeless, right? Now here's the meta part. There's post irony, which is when you go from sincerity into irony. So it seems like you're joking, right? But then you go back to sincerity. So for example, in front of your friends, you say, I'm homeless with your cardboard sign. And at first they think that you're joking, just like you were last time. You're like, oh, he's joking, he's homeless. But no, you're actually homeless now. So that's post-irony. And then the last type, the most confusing, is meta-irony, which is where you don't even know what you're trying to say. You're just kind of gauging a reaction. So for example, I'm homeless, and you just lost your apartment, and you're not really sure if you're homeless or not, because what does that even mean? You don't know if the audience thinks you're homeless or not. It's sort of meta in that way that nobody knows. And so that one's the most janky. But anyways, I hope this is tingling your brain for how you might be able to go meta. So those were all the types of humor. The action items I want you to think about with this video is just really start asking, how can I make this funny in every interaction that you have? Do 10 minutes of sentence crafting for 3 months. So say a sentence and then immediately say another sentence using the first word of that sentence. So for example, I'm going to do one right now. Now I'm saying a word at the end of the sentence, starting with the word that I ended the last sentence with lots of care to what I say after. After all, I want to say something funny. Funny makes your belly tingle. Tingling is great. See what I did there? The reason that's helpful is that it teaches your mind to freely associate more and say what comes up without a filter, which, as we were talking about in the mindsets of humor, is a lot of what makes people not funny, is they don't see the funny, or even if they see it, they don't do anything about it. So that'll help a lot. And then the last thing I want you to do is take one of the humor first principles that I walked you through and work on it for a day. So working on cognitive humor, for example, and the rule of 3 or something. Then choose another and another, and do this over and over again until you repeat the cycle. As you're doing all this, try and assess, what is my humor style? Like, what feels good for me? What types of humor do I like? What context do I like giving it in? What is my jam? And as you find out that style that resonates with you, you'll feel so much more authentic about your humor. But I really want you to focus on the real power of humor as you're going through this. Remember what I said, humor is about loosening the self's serious grip on reality. And the best part is that as you're more humorous, as you loosen your own serious grip, you're going to help all your other students loosen theirs as well. And so in this way, humor becomes not just a way to make people laugh, but actually to make people more conscious. If you like this video, I highly recommend you check out my free college freshman Cosmic Journaling Kit. It's a gamified journaling system that'll help you build your emotional intelligence, your self-understanding, and your purpose with 1,000 journaling questions in just 15 minutes a day. And a lot of it will help you build your humor because you'll understand yourself more and loosen that grip that you have on reality. So you can check that out in the description below. As always, have a phenomenal rest of your day. Eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.